Commissioners Brown, Fuller,
Here.
Harris,
Here.
Herr,
Here.
Vice Chair Rodriguez, Chairman Little.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Would you please stand for the salute?
Please follow my read. Here's the flag. Are we ready? Begins. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
No presentations this morning. Non-agenda items, both these cards here, Kathleen? Okay. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of March 14th, 2018?
Yes.
Can we entertain a
Make a motion to approve. Second.
We have a first and a second. Please vote. 4-0. Let's get right into our reports here. Sheriff's Department.
Good morning to the Commission. I have a presentation that encompasses the last 2 months. We did not have a meeting for April, so I have the crime stats for March and for April as well. So I'll go ahead and get started with March. Okay, in the month of March, you have the crime stats for the burglary suppression team. You had 17 felony arrests, search warrants were 0, the warrant arrests were 3, firearms recovered 1, and recovered property amount $122,250. For the Lancaster team, we had 42 felony arrests, 30 misdemeanor arrests, a total of 72 arrests. Stolen vehicles recovered were 5, and the firearms recovered 3. The robbery suppression team, felony arrests was 6, search warrants 0, firearms recovered 0, total robberies 27, 15 strong arm, 15 armed and 12 strong arm. Some community events that we had in the month of March, we had our most wanted, our crime prevention, neighborhood watch meeting, home meeting. And community engagement, we had coffee with the deputy at the Lemon Leaf, business for breakfast with the chamber, and Read Across America, which was Dr. Seuss's birthday. Here's some pictures from our coffee with the deputy, where we covered the Ready Lancaster. Councilmember Raj Mali came out and did a presentation on getting the community ready for disaster preparedness. It was a great opportunity for the attendees to learn about how to do that. It's Dr. Seuss's birthday. We went all across different schools in the community, and we read to the kids books from Dr. Seuss. A great interaction with the kids there. And also we did at Quartz Hills, we did high school, we did a career day. We were able to talk to the kids about recruitment and have them be involved with possibly becoming a deputy sheriff in the future. So escape and then pull up the other one. Perfect. For our CompStat trends, see for rapes in March, we were still trending below the average line there. Robberies are also trending below the average line. Aggravated assaults just peaking a little bit above the average line. Domestic violence is added for Commissioner Rodriguez at her request, and it just looks like it's spiking just barely above the average line there. Burglaries, a little above average. Larceny also. And then grand theft is below the average line. And arsons are well below the average. So the LEAPS progress report. During the month of March 2018, LSD formally logged 125 LEAPS service calls where tactical field operations were supported. LEAPS was dispatched 108 times, totaling 39.9 hours, and was airborne and available for 271.8 hours. We've had a lot of people operating that equipment because we have people who are on light duty and other personnel that have been really utilizing the LEAPS program, which is awesome. Also, we have 36% of the incidents were for supported people, 18% property, arrests and detentions 22%, vehicles 10%, and observations 14%. Crime Commission report for April 2018. For the burglary suppression team, we have 22 felony arrests, 5 search warrants. Warrant arrest was 8, and firearms recovered was 10. Recovered property, $158,300. The Lancaster team, 24 felony arrests, 32 misdemeanors, total of 56 arrests, 5 recovered stolen vehicles, and 3 recovered firearms. Robbery team, 19 felony arrests, 1 search warrant, 1 firearm recovered, 29 total robberies, 9 armed, and 20 strong arm. We did our most wanted crime prevention program, neighborhood watch as well. Community engagement was Coffee with the Deputy at Lemon Leaf, Sacred Heart station tour, and K-Mix radio broadcast. This is, we had recruitment came to our Coffee with the Deputy at Lemon Leaf in April. It was an opportunity for them to talk to the attendees. We also did this Sacred Heart station tour. Was you can see the interaction with the captain and the lieutenant there, the kids coming through the tour. Also, we have the K-Mix radio broadcast where we're trying to reach out through the radio, give more broadcasts, the PSAs, so things, programs we're doing, events coming up, something that we can, another area where we can communicate and get our message out to the community. The CompStat report, monthly trends for 2018. Rapes over the period is trending just a little bit upward. robberies are right there, just below the average line. Aggravated assaults trending downward. Domestic violence is pretty much right where it was from, or it's changes slightly upwards. Burglaries trending downward. Same with larceny thefts. Grand theft vehicles trending just barely above the average line. The Leaps Progress Report during the April 2018 is the LSD formally logged 134 Leaps service calls where tactical field operations was reported. Leaps was dispatched 117 times, totaling 40.4 hours, and was airborne available for 314.6 hours. There's 16 arrests, 29 fights and assaults, 12 burglary or robberies, 11 traffic stops, 29 other offenses, suspicious circumstances, and 3 persons with gun calls. 31% were in support of people, 19 was in support of property, 16% for arrests and detentions, 11% for vehicles, and 23% is in observations, arrests. You can see some pictures down there at the bottom of some of the views where it was being utilized in its capacity. That's all I got for that, sir.
Any questions? Real quick, on this program here, that was brought up a few months back. Is this being really utilized in all the schools, as far as you know?
We're distributing those to the community. We post them along with our citizen complaint forms at the library and here at Ports Hill and pretty much all our community centers. And I believe it's being distributed at the schools.
Being distributed, is there a way of getting it out more to the younger generation? We had a sheriff board meeting this morning, and there was a presentation brought to our knowledge, and you hear these horror stories about shootings and this and that and everything else, and what a young individual should do when pulled over by an officer, you know. And back in my day, it was like, when practically most everyone up here, we had to worry more about our fathers, what we had to deal with more than anything else, let alone law enforcement. We were more worried about what they were going to do to us. And the kids today need something, because I have a 19-year-old, and when she says to you, well, what should I do when I get stopped? It's kind of ironic that, you know, the younger generation has no tools at their, and I know this was brought up a while ago, and I was just wondering if a possibility of, I don't even know, I can remember back in school, and this goes back a long time, there was a course on criminal justice or criminal law or this and that you usually had to take before you got out of high school. I'm wondering, passing out pamphlets, are they looking at them? Are they reading them? Or do we even have any communication on that part at all? Or do you know?
You want to describe what that is so people know?
No, I'm sorry. This pamphlet was brought to us, thanks, Tim, this pamphlet was brought to us, and what you should do when you get stopped by a police officer or a sheriff's department officer, and what, your rights are and everything else. And it's a great pamphlet if the individual's reading it and what they should do. It's one thing that you put it in somebody's hand and they're out there. I don't know what we can do more. I don't know if there is anything we can do more. We can make the information available to them, but I'm just trying to think sometimes when the younger generation today is looking at something like this, what you should do when an officer pulls you over, and how do you comply, and what you should do, and yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, type thing. Things that we were brought up with in our generation, Yeah.
And in fact, we're looking at bringing out a program. I want to say it's pullover approach protocol. It was put out by I want to say nonprofit designed it, but it's kind of a more geared towards that age group. And it's actually, they watch a video where it shows a number of different scenarios taking place. And so not only what you should do or how you should behave or how you should act during a traffic stop, but why it's important to do that way and how bad things can happen from both ends if you don't. So we're looking at bringing that out. That would probably address exactly what you're talking about.
I just came across this, Captain, the other day on my desk, and I remember we talked about it, and I'm going, I should bring this up again and see.
And that's something we put out on social media also,
Right.
because really in today's day and age, that's where young people, they get their information
That's true.
in 10-second sound bites off of tweet or Twitter or whatever social media. So we actively target that through our social media campaign in addition to the flyers. And that we're always looking at how do we reach the public. And in fact, I don't know if you guys know Ali Villalobos, who was really our social media person over at the station. She has the highest following of any sheriff's unit other than headquarters. She's very savvy at that. The community relations office has a very robust following. So we try to target a lot of people, not just through that, but through that social media, because that's where everyone's at now.
That's true. That is true. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And just in regards to stats, it's hard to, they weren't side-by-side comparisons, so it's kind of hard to look at it, but just to digest it, if you looked at March, we saw spikes in burglaries, a little bit in robberies, but mostly burglaries and larceny. We had a particularly prolific crew on the east side that was very vexing, very active. We changed our deployment strategies a little bit and did some undercover surveillance type stuff. And we actually took that crew into custody about 2 weeks ago. So it was in March. So you saw April, it spiked up in April, was starting to come back down. I suspect we'll see it go down farther. The burglary team and the robbery team, Lancaster team, and OSS, Operation Safe Streets, they were all involved in that. I think they've got 5 in custody behind that ring now, and they recovered, I want to say 6 or 7 firearms with that one group, one of them being an AR-15 rifle. And then our robbery team was very successful in the beginning of April with a couple of prolific characters. One was you probably saw news stories on it or paper, using a paper. We had a guy who was almost like a note job. It was a note job type guy going into fast food restaurants and liquor store, or gas stations, and he was giving a note like you typically do in a bank, give me your money, but he also showed a gun, and he was responsible for about 9 robberies that we know of between December and last month, mostly in the March-April time frame. He was in custody. They got some great evidence, including on a search warrant, including one of his notes that he had left in his jacket in his closet, and they recovered the firearm, so he's out of play. And then there was another prolific armed robber who was kind of doing both sides. He was doing robberies and very prolific in commercial burglaries. And in fact, he had done 2 robberies in conjunction right in the central area of Lancaster one day. And the robbery team got him right after the second robbery, fairly quickly after the second robbery. And even in that short amount of time, he had burglarized a car. They found stolen property from a car that he had got in after that. So we've had some really good arrests. Those teams, they take it very personally. They have a very vested interest in it. It's very frustrating for them when they can't catch them right away. But I think you saw that's accounting for that dip, and I think we'll see more with those very prolific, and they're out of play. So,
Thank you, Captain. Sure. Any other questions? Thanks. Appreciate it, sir. Captain, how are you, sir?
Good morning. How are you?
Good.
Okay, so for CHP in the month of April, we've had so far, well, this is cumulative for the year. As far as our fatal collisions, we've had a total of 12 with 13 deaths total in our jurisdiction, which would include unincorporated county areas as well as SR 14. Most of the fatal accidents are happening out in the county areas, not so much on the freeway. A lot of the accidents are due to people losing control of their vehicle after they drift onto the right shoulder and then overcorrect coming back head-on with another vehicle or rolling into the desert. And then we have a lot of stop sign violations, and unfortunately, we've also had a couple of DUIs. We've had a total last month, I'm sorry, we had a total of 54 injury collisions, 137 total collisions, 9 DUI-related traffic collisions. We had 48 DUI arrests. 2 of them were felonies. Our total arrests were 1,358. Enforcement contacts, 2,003. And our motorist services, 473. We also had 3 drug-related arrests, 3 vehicle theft arrests, and one of our pursuits, I think we had 5 pursuits last month, ended in a arrest of a kidnapping suspect. So overall, we had a pretty busy month in the month of April.
Really busy.
Yes,
Any
sir.
questions? Anything? Thank you, sir. Everything
you.
you do, thank you. District Attorney Bob Sherwood, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Good morning. I took over for Mr. Franklin. I'm the new head deputy. I just started in April.
Welcome.
Thank you. I've spent most of my career up here in the Antelope Valley. The last year and a half, I was downtown Los Angeles. I'm still sort of assessing the situation up in the Antelope Valley. I've only been here for a month, so I don't have anything to report, but I expect I'll have some information for you next month once I get a better handle on what's going on in the office. So if you have any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer them at this time.
Well, we appreciate you being here out of your busy schedule, because if it's anything like Mr. Franklin's, I would imagine that you're swamped. So we appreciate you being here. So we'll look forward to any information you bring to us in the future. So any questions from the commission? Well, welcome. Thank you, sir. Jocelyn.
Good morning. Nothing major to report. With the legal division, we continue to work with code enforcement and with Lee's team on abating some public nuisance conditions, try to remove some of the visual blight that's around. We're taking a pretty strong approach with nuisance vehicles, inoperative vehicles, unregistered vehicles, abandoned vehicles, get those off of private property that really causes a clutter and a blight. I will be bringing to you next month 2 ordinances. One is the human trafficking ordinance that we've discussed briefly at a couple of meetings. And we're also working on an ordinance to prohibit the distribution of food in the public right-of-way. We've seen a lot of that in recent months, and it's a health hazard. The sanitation of the food, the trash, the disposal, it seems to be a real problem, so we're going to be bringing an ordinance concerning that to you as well. I'll get those drafts to you in advance of the meeting in June, so you have time to review and have any questions or comments at that time. That's about it.
Anything? Nothing? Okay. Thanks, Jocelyn. Mr. Dorico.
Yes, Chairman Little, Commissioners. As promised at the last meeting, I'd like to bring up the folks from our traffic engineering department to talk about how we formulate speed limits, which seems to be a lot of misinformation out there. So, Matt, Trelise, if you guys could step up, introduce yourselves, and Randy, if you could operate the computer here, and then I think what's important here is to understand what the law dictates and how restricted we are as it comes to this.
You mean they don't create the speed limits?
No, sir. The city doesn't create them.
Right, Tori?
Yeah, well, good morning, Commissioners. I am Matt Simons. I'm the city traffic engineer. And, yeah, as you were just saying, surprisingly, the local jurisdictions do not set speed limits as, within their jurisdictions. That is something that is dictated and regulated by the state fairly strictly. Basically, the 2 documents that are used to formulate not only the intent of law behind it is the California Vehicle Code, which gives it, the speed limits the teeth, and then the California MUTCD, or the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, is the one that sets out the methodology through which the speed limits are set. So, using these 2, let's see if I can get this right. There we go. these speed limits are basically set with the following principles in mind so that they can be followed, they can be enforced, and they're not overly strenuous. In free society, laws must be largely self-enforcing. Most people behave prudently most of the time. Speed limit thresholds should serve to identify the few motorists whose behavior is blatantly inconsistent with the majority. And finally, motorists generally can recognize or be warned of driving environment and expected to adjust their driving accordingly. So with these tenets in mind, this is how the speed limits are set. They're not set to be overly oppressive, because if they're too low or too oppressive, they will routinely be ignored and eventually lose a lot of the power that they have behind them and make them very hard to enforce. So there are two, through the CVC, there are two maximum speed limits that have been set. These are the speed limit that's for 55 mile an hour is on for 2-lane undivided highways. This is the maximum speed that individuals are allowed to drive on this particular type of facility. The second one is the 65 mile an hour, which applies to all other facilities, which are multi-lane or divided facilities, as shown here in the picture. So these are the maximum speed limits that are set for these facilities. There are also the prima facie speed limits, which are set for certain specific conditions, either whether it be facilities or type of conditions that may lead to a more dangerous situation. The first one is the 15 mile an hour, where you go for alleys or for rail crossings or uncontrolled intersections that have sight distance concerns. Then also the 25 mile an hour zone is set for residential and business districts in areas around schools and other sensitive land uses like senior centers and such, just to reduce the amount of potential for pedestrian or bicycle interaction in these particular areas. Now, regular posted speed limits can be set anywhere between 25 miles an hour and 55 miles an hour on a 5 mile an hour increment. What we use to do these is to set the particular speed. What is done is an engineering and traffic survey is taken, and then the results of that are used to determine the speed, the actual speed limit itself, and we'll get into exactly what that entails here in just a moment. Once the speed limits have been set or been identified, they have to be adopted by a local ordinance, and then they also have to be posted to be enforced. So the engineering and traffic survey, what this entails is this is basically a spot speed survey that is done on a particular facility, where we go out and we do radar speed counts as the traffic goes by during off-peak hours and unimpeded free-flow traffic. So in other words, you don't have a situation where congestion is slowing traffic down, so you get unrealistic or inappropriate speed limit or speeds just because of the congestion. Also, these particular surveys are conducted in locations where they're far enough away from traffic intersections so that people aren't either queuing up for the intersection or they're not having to slow down for a signal that's ahead, something along those lines. The second thing that we look at is accident history or accident records that occur at these locations. It's generally done over a 2 to 3 year period, generally with a 12-month rolling period that would identify the highest accident rate that occurs during that time frame. Third, is you go out and we do a physical inventory of what happens at or around the particular facility in question, looking for items that are conditions that are not readily apparent to the driver. This would not necessarily be the width of the road, the curvature of the grade, things like that, but it would be more situations where there's missing infrastructure, maybe it's on a safe route to school that the particular drivers may not know, something along those lines where it's conditions that they wouldn't necessarily immediately recognize without having prior knowledge. Again, if the particular facility happens to run through either what's considered a residential district or a business district, and then also just general pedestrian and bicycle safety issues that may arise. Now, the main item that is used to set the speed limits from these engineering traffic surveys is, again, the prevailing speed. Now, again, what we do is we take that, we go out and do the radar surveys for this, and as we are tracking these vehicles, we're looking for the 85th percentile speed, which essentially is if 100 cars go past this particular spot, it's the the 85, the top 15 speeds are identified, and then at the 85th, that's the point where the speed limit is set, because that is supposed to be where most people would rationally choose to drive at that speed. You will have some of the outliers that will go faster, and you'll have other individuals that will drive slower, but the 85th the 85th percentile has been identified as the best or the most logical location, or most logical speed by which to set the speed limit. So then, the speed limit is, we identified what the 85th percentile is, and then depending on how that falls, we either have to round up or round down to the nearest 5-mile-an-hour increment. So say the speed limit was 43, we would round up to 45, 42, we would round down to 40. Also, there are certain issues or certain items that we can also apply that would provide us the ability to reduce the 85th percentile speed down an additional 5 miles an hour. And again, that's with the conditions that are not readily apparent. If there's several of those that occur at a specific location, or they're severe enough, then we can use that. If we document the appropriate occurrences, we can use that to then reduce the speed that additional 5 miles an hour. But other than that, we really don't have a lot of control over what the speed limits are set, other than prevailing speeds on the roadways. So currently, in an effort to reduce speeds and reduce the speed limits as much as possible, the city is currently using what are called the 3 E's of traffic safety, which is engineering, education, and enforcement. Now, on the engineering portion of this, the city's got several programs that we are implementing, listed here: Safer Routes to School, Complete Streets, and then the last one, the Lancaster Safer Streets Action Plan, is one that we're just in the process of developing and rolling out, which will help us identify some of the hot spots in town, which are either have issues where we would have to go in and take a specific look at roadway geometry, speed limits, something along those lines, to make them safer locations. As far as education, the city also had done some outreach as part of the Safe Routes to School program that was recently adopted. I believe it was either a year or two ago, had gotten and applied an OTS, or an Office of Traffic Safety grant, that provided us money to go out and buy helmets for 3rd graders specifically, and then also provide them some bike education and some education on how to ride on the streets and safety issues and things along those lines. And finally, we will be doing some outreach as part of the Safer Streets Action Plan once that program is up and rolling. Finally, with enforcement, we've been coordinating with local agencies here to do some spot surveys or spot enforcement, such as around schools and things like that, where we get calls from residents with concerns about the speeds on certain roadways and things like that. And then again, as the Safer Streets program comes out, we'll be working with law enforcement a lot more to make sure that everybody's in the loop, a lot more coordination and communication on certain locations that have some issues, and we want to help clean those up. So again, I guess just in conclusion, the prevailing item that is for speeds is the speed limits. I'm sorry, is the prevailing speed on the roads today. So there's not much we can do about that directly, other than some of the items listed here to try and bring those down.
Matt, with that in mind, is if when you see an issue or somebody brings it to your attention that there's an issue of higher speeds, when you do this study, and let's say your study comes out and says we need a reduction of speed in this particular area, this particular street, how long a period of time before you do your study would you say when you submit and you find out that maybe that is too fast, and you have to submit it or do your studies and send it out, and then that's when they lower it? Or does the city have the jurisdiction to say, no, I see that we've done this, and that percentile factor comes into place, and you can reduce the speed?
Well, as far as speaking directly with the engineering and traffic surveys, those are done. Those have to be done every 5 years. They have to be updated every 5 years. In certain cases, they can be extended to 7 years and even 10 years, depending on certain criteria as far as certification of both the machine used to do the surveys and the officers conducting those surveys. And then also if there's some other situations that are not occurring in the area, such as significant changes to the roadway, significant changes in land use. So these are done every 5 to 10 years, depending on the situation. And what we do is the survey, we go out, we find out what the prevailing speeds are, and then at that point, we have to compare those new speeds to the ones that were previously used and determine if there is a need to change the speed limits. And again, we can go out and we can see if there's anything that's changed in the geometry or any other land uses in the area. Generally, we would put out a report or a survey that we would then have to bring to council for them to approve and adopt, and then at that point we could go out and we could actually change the speed limits. So it's not necessarily that we find out an issue from a particular resident or several residents that we go out and we can immediately change the speed limits. I think if it's a specific issue or if it's a serious enough issue, I would assume that we could short track that a little bit, but for the most part, it is a little bit of a
lengthy
process that you have to go through to get it done. And it's generally done more as a citywide or a region-wide activity.
When do you anticipate that the Safer Streets Master Plan is going to be completed?
The Safer Streets, well, it's not necessarily a master plan. What it is it's a program that we're going to work on so that we can start identifying specific intersections or specific locations that do have more frequent accidents, whether they be, unfortunately fatals, or if there's severe accidents, or if there's just certain instances where we're getting multiple complaints, something along those lines. It's basically a program to help us identify those particular locations, so then we can prioritize them for funding that we can go out and get, whether it be through grants or CIP projects or whatnot. So it's not necessarily a program or a master plan that will be completed at one point, but it's kind of an ongoing process that we can use to identify those particular locations and then just start taking them off the list as funding becomes available.
Okay, thank you.
So the process too is that when you do this process in your radar system and this and that, and you do your counts, could be a lot of times if those cars are traveling at a higher rate of speed, which if it's posted at 55, they're traveling 65. You take those points and you could be raising that speed limit to that area, even though that the safe drive speed should be 50 miles an hour. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yes, yes. Unfortunately, again, since the basis for setting the speed limits is based on the prevailing speeds, if conditions are right, there is a possibility that the prevailing speed would increase, and we would have to raise the speed limit per the statutes.
Have you ever had a situation where it's come to your attention that there's an emergency area that reduction of speed should be done immediately in an area from growth, whatever it may take, and you guys have come to the council and said, I think we got a serious problem here?
I personally haven't seen anything along those lines, but I don't know if you have anything particular that you've noticed there, Julie.
Good morning. Troy Neapolis, City Engineer. The only example I can personally think of is the boulevard. When we redid the boulevard, we did a study right away and brought it to council so that we could take that speed limit from 35 down to 15 miles an hour.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I know you guys always get, what are you guys doing? You're not, you get blamed for the speed limits, and it's hard to, when the people say, all you have to do is lower it. It's not that easy. The process is not that easy. It's a lengthy process, it seems like.
Yeah, so and again, through, some of the programs that we're working on here at the end, we're hoping to change the mindset a little bit that, you can slow down a little bit. You don't have to drive as quickly as possible and pay attention a little bit more, and hopefully make things safer all around.
How are the speed bumps that were installed, how did you determine where those were to be installed? In the various speed bumps, like for instance on 27th Street West between J8 and K, and there's very other areas you have speed bumps. What was the indicator for that?
Those are specific locations, those are specific requests that some of the residents have. And then what we do is we go out and we, again, monitor not only the speeds of traffic, but the volume of traffic that goes along these particular roadways where we're being asked to put in speed bumps. And then they have to meet certain warrants to actually, or certain thresholds, I'm sorry, to actually warrant installation. And then, once they do meet the warrants, then we also have to go back out to the community and work with them to get a majority of the homeowners that are going to be affected by that to sign on to the fact that they actually want the speed humps to be installed. So just because it's requested doesn't mean we go out and automatically put it in. It does have to meet certain threshold criteria, and then it also has to meet the, I can't say approval, but at least has to get the blessing by a majority of the residents in the area that will be affected.
Thank you.
The radar system that's set up it's a portable, it sits there at a certain area that's put off on the side street, is that what it is?
Yeah, generally what you do is well, it's not necessary. You can either set it off to the side or you can use a radar gun, whatever the particular tool that has been certified to be used. And then basically you do it in an indiscriminate way so that you're not tipping people off, or you can't put up a flashing sign that says slow down, and then take it. I mean, it has to be unimpeded traffic under normal driving
I would think a radar gun would impede that. It would make people say, wait a minute, slow down. Here comes a radar gun.
So what about the construction area? Who set the speed limit on construction area?
Construction is set by the MUTCD, and that's
What is?
The California Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices.
I see.
And so those are,
So there is no way we can adjust it. I'm looking at the Avenue I between 10th and 15th Street. It's under construction, where they set the speed limits at 30 miles an hour. Personally, I think this is still fast. There's a few people I observed, they lost the control with that speed, went to the ditch,
yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, those speed limits are set by MUTCD under certain specific conditions that are identified in each one of the particular work zones.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think it was good that Matt and Trulise could come out, because you can see that as for a city and for the municipality, it's concerning, because citizens call regularly. We have lots of areas of the city that we get into long discussions about speed and working with our partners in law enforcement about some of the problem areas that we've already identified. So I think moving forward, our traffic engineering folks have come up with some great suggestions that they've suggested to the council as far as road diets and things like that to impact the speeds in some of our areas of concern. But again, that's ongoing, and especially with what's coming forward with some of the resources that are being put out for new paving and infrastructure improvements, I think we're going to see more of those things throughout the city that can impact that.
Lee, what is the answer to a real problematic intersection? For instance, one that comes to mind is near Desert Christian High School on 25th and J8. I've seen cars go through that block wall I don't know how many times.
Right. Actually, that one is slated for some improvement changes coming up, I believe in August, I think, is initiated. So that's been recognized as a problem. We've had a couple fatalities there beyond the fact that some folks have gone through the wall there. Most of that traffic's occurring at highlighted times for the college, and as well as the captain sends his folks out there regularly operationally from their traffic division, and they'll cite people regularly there for the running the light there, okay, or for speed.
But what will you do to the intersection? I'm just curious to know, what is the fix, or is there such a fix?
The primary collisions that are occurring there are from the left-hand turn movements. So you have someone that takes a risk, makes a left-hand turn, and then gets broadsided. So what we're doing is adding protected lefts all four directions, so that way they have to make the left on the line.
Have the arrow.
Only. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Matt, Trulise, thank you. Tough job. I mean, you guys do a phenomenal work for the city. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Again, important, and from an educational standpoint for the public and probably some more things we should put out through the public safety website for the city so people have a better understanding of the process. And again, it would be great on a municipal level if we could just set our own speed limits based on indicators that we see, but that's not the case. I'd like to have Tracy, can you come up? We had the Poppy Festival in April. Hopefully everyone got to go out and enjoy it. It was a phenomenal year this year. I think attendance was at an all-time high. Tracy coordinates everything for the safety zone there, and I just kind of want her to go out and thank everybody that participated, and some of those folks are in the room here.
Yes. Good morning, Chairman Little and Commissioners. The safety zone had a ton of people this year. We moved locations, but nevertheless, we had a ton of people. So I would like to thank the vendors that were there. I have them in alphabetical order. So I have CERT, California Highway Patrol, Child and Family Guidance, our Public Safety Department for the city, Hathaway Sycamores, Help for Heroes, the Jacob Hefter Foundation, LA County Animal Control. We got 46 animals adopted this year. That included cats and dogs. Only 2 were transported back to the center, so it was a good year. LA County Fire Department, LA County Public Health, LA County Sheriff Department recruitment was also there, the Red, White, and Blue CDC, as well as the city's Ready Lancaster. So I want to thank everyone that came out to help support the city and make the safety zone great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.
I think interesting with the change of location, Tracy does a good job of coordinating all these folks. Sheriff Recruitment Bureau out there had a lot of attention, as well as the CHP, and thank you again for reaching out. They had a lot of the Explorer programs were there, and truthfully, Lance, thank you for the Explorers that come out and work this event every year. I don't believe we could put this off. How many kids?
We had approximately 18 kids working each day.
Yeah, each day. For free, and a lot of our reservists too as well. So it was a great event. Also, this past couple months, we've been focusing a lot of our resources out there with our contract guys and with the Sheriff's Department dealing with complaints about homelessness camps. Okay, I'll bring Randy. Randy does the coordination for, no, you don't have to get up, Randy. I'm going to save you for the next meeting. Okay, Randy does a lot of coordination between the Sheriff's Department, our Public Works folks, the CDC inmate crew, and those things out there that deal with those cleanups. So I'd like to bring a presentation forward to you about what laws are affecting us as to being effective in this issue, some of the problems that we foresee in the future, and some of the steps the city's taking moving forward to remedy some of these problems. And that's all I have today.
Any questions for Mr. Dorico?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for this type of presentation. It's very helpful, I think, for us and our education, but for all those who might be listening to it as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee. Mr. Cook, how are you, sir?
Chairman Little and Commissioners, I want to personally thank you for this forum. This works really well. We're not able to do this in other areas of the cities and in the valley, so I appreciate the opportunity of coming up here and being able to say a few things for the senator. It's a busy week right now up at the Senate office. We're running a lot of bills through committees. If I can read off a couple of the senator's bills, SB 10,009, which expands the community college tutoring beyond just basic skills for subject areas that are degree applicable or transfer level. It's in the Senate Appropriations Committee right now. SB 1024, court-ordered mental health treatment for convicted animal abusers. This is actually getting a lot of traction. We're quite happy with it. This would impose mandatory education courses for all animal abuse offenders and mandatory mental health evaluations for a limited number of more and violent animal abuse offenses. It's in Senate Appropriations as well. A lot of case study on sexual and domestic abuse has come from convicted animal abusers in their childhood. So if we're able to stem this early and help stem it early, we might be able to prevent domestic violence in the future. So this is where this all comes from. SB 1198, it gives statutory authority to the Sex Offender Management Board to collect background information on sex offenders from the California Department of Justice for research purposes. It also adds two board members to the Board of Juvenile Offender to address changes made to the law last year that placed juvenile offenders on the board's purview. This legislation will help ensure that California continues to obtain the best information on sexual recidivism rates by various types of offenders. The state must effectively and accurately measure the risk of recidivism posed by these convicted offenders. This is also in Senate appropriations. SB 1199 requires the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation to first try to place sex offenders that are released on parole, probation, or on post-release community supervision to the city or a close geographic location where they have family, social, economic ties, etc. It's barring any convicted felon, victim, or other restrictions. By placing sex offenders close to family and other community connections, it'll help reduce the recidivism, which is the best chance of success. This bill has passed both the Senate and is now in the Assembly. Joint Resolution 19 calls for the federal government to increase special education funding from Individuals with Disability Education Act. If the federal government funded at any level they are supposed to, it would mean an additional $3 to $4 billion a year to California. The resolution passed the Senate and is now in the Assembly as well. We've also asked the state for 3 budget requests for $750,000 to fund full-time staff at the State Homeless Coordinating and Funding Council so they can accomplish their goal of coordinating and funding California's approach to the homelessness crisis. We've also asked for a budget request to change the age of onset definition of developmental disability from age 18 to 21 so that these individuals can receive regional center services, which was presented by Senator Wilk in both the Assembly and Senate budget subcommittees on health and human services recently. And then there's a budget request for staff positions at Antelope Valley College for an aerospace institute, which once up and running will have an enormous impact on the Southern California region because of the presence in the aerospace sector. By the way, all Senate bills have to be out of the Senate by June 1st. And the state budget, the governor will release his May revision on May 11th or the 14th. This will be based on revenues in the past 5 months. We are expecting a major surplus of $7 billion. There will be many, many competing proposals on how to spend the surplus. The legislature has until June 15th to pass the state budget. I'm bringing up a couple events that are happening in the Antelope Valley this month. We're involved with the May 12th Power of Play out at Lane Park. This is to show kids that can actually go out and play instead of being on their cell phones and their iPads. May 19th, at Transition to Independence Seminar. This is at the Learn for Life corporate headquarters over off of Business Center Way. This really helps workshop on how parents and professionals need to know to help young adults with developmental disabilities transition from high school to adulthood and employment. There's a gap that falls off when they get out of high school, and there's nothing left, to learn how to transition into this independent world. And then on May 22nd, we're conducting a senior scams seminar. This is brought on by the California State Contractors Board. It'll be in Legacy Commons in Palmdale. It brings 4 board panelists up to try to help seniors understand that when the IRS calls, they're not calling on the phone. They don't need to pay it. Somebody calls and knocks on their door from Edison or the gas company, say, hey, I need cash right now, or we're going to turn off your services. This goes on a lot in our communities, and the California State Contractors Board reaches out to do this for seniors. So that's what we're doing right now. Any questions?
Thanks, Rick.
Anything? Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it.
Some fruit, Ken.
Chairman Little, can I take just a second? I'd like to introduce someone that's in the audience today, and actually I'd like to drag him into our meetings more often. Eric Ifandu. Eric is a director for the supervision for AB 109 for the Department of Probation. So if we can convince him, he's actually my neighbor too, so I get to yell at him over the fence. But Eric probably would be a wealth of information as it relates to reentry and being the supervisor for AB 109. So I'd like to invite Eric if with your permission, back to present.
Absolutely.
On some of
I
their
think
recent endeavors, if you're okay with that, Eric? All right.
Absolutely, we would really appreciate that. Thank you for being here, sir. Okay, moving forward. Public business from the floor on non-agendized items. The portion of the agenda allows the individual the opportunity to address the Criminal Justice Commission on any item not on the agenda. State law prohibits the commission from taking action on items not on the agenda, and your matter will be referred to staff. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes. We have a couple of speaker cards. This one is Will, just Will.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. I didn't have your last name, so I apologize. Is it just Will?
I mean, if you would like it,
Whatever you'd like. Yes, sir.
it's Will Pryor.
Okay.
And as I indicated there, this is what I consider a public safety threat, you know, and I guess I have 3 minutes. I will read pretty much. A barrier exists between city employees and the public for a reason, counter or door. Whenever that barrier is breached, the breacher has endangered the public. The Sheriff Department and City Attorney should take criminal threats by a city official, a director, in this case, Director DeRico, whose office is in this building, very seriously. The incident happened on April 4th. I noticed that there's cameras all around here, and I would hope that there's cameras in this building. You know, so anyone can actually view the cameras, if that's the case, between 2:45 on April 4th to 3:15. Also, threatening to use the Sheriff Department as a henchman to carry out his criminal threat is criminal. Director DeRico advises that the Sheriff Department works for him. I've had numerous encounters with the Sheriff Department because you guys have the checkpoints. The Sheriff Department has always been respectful. Never been arrested. I'm over 60 years old and never been arrested in my life. Do not have a criminal background. I was raised in a military background, you know, law and order, discipline around officers in command. I actually went to Army ROTC on an academic scholarship. You know, assumptions were made about me for some reason. When I speak in this tone. You know, there's no need to raise or in my voice or anything like that, or yell at people or call names. It's not in my nature. So as the city of Lancaster official, who does Director DeRico work for? He seems to indicate to me that everyone here works for him. Right there, that's what it means to me. I am a citizen. I would assume that you guys work for me as well. You know, obviously as far as within the law. You know, so it says, be advised, I am soon to retire, never being arrested or engaged in criminal activities, and Director DeRico prejudicially advised that I should be used to being arrested. You know, I indicated that I was going to call the Sheriff Department and make a report. And this is when he says, you know, go ahead, they work for me. I put my hands behind my back, you know, in a non-threatening manner. He says, get used to that. You should be used to it. I mean, why? You know, Director DeRico seems to believe that the Sheriff's Department enforces his personal law and that this citizen cannot contact the Sheriff's Department, but I have. I actually have called, filed a restraining order. There's a hearing next week on this matter. You know, I am going to be requesting copies of any videos or anything like that which would document the incident. Also, finished?
Finished, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor. Your points are noted. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. David Paul.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, good morning. I was thinking, Chair, a little about what you said about media presentation for young people, and I said it to the city clerk after our last meeting, the Chris Rock video of what to do when pulled over by a policeman. That's still something that should be viewed by everyone because it brings humor to a serious subject. You know, I'm standing here because 15 years ago I was concerned about traffic. Not much has changed, but my attitude about it has. I wanted statistics. I wanted facts. How many tickets are written on these streets? You know, my problem was people driving down my 25-mile-an-hour street at 60, 70 miles an hour with my kids playing on the street, and there was nothing I could do about it. So I came up with this Human Accountability Project, which was a traffic initiative to get satellite or pole-based traffic monitoring so there'd be no fudging with the law. People would learn respect for the law by upholding the law, and it seemed like a good idea. One of the things that I had in there was a check sheet for kids in middle school to monitor their parents' traffic behavior. You know, did you turn the turn signal on? Did you exceed the speed limit? Did you text while you drive? And them sitting in the back helps them learn the law by watching what their parents do while they're driving. And it does compile some statistics, although it's not scientific, but it just gives people the idea that they are responsible for driving in a way that protects everyone. So I just thought that was pretty cool, but some of these problems, they just never go away. How do you get people to love and respect the law, especially when it affects everybody? So I told you before, my podcast is up, Upholding Matters, and I'm going to put my fourth one up Friday. And I would ask y'all just to go take a listen. I found out now, the hybrid of the Human Accountability Project, the Chinese are now monitoring. They have thousands of closed-circuit cameras, and they monitor people, and they give you a point score. And if you jaywalk or you do this, they take points away from you. So this monitoring thing in a gross Big Brother way is coming, and it's just a weird world we live in. So we'll see. We'll see. But I'd like to be able to slow the traffic down and have people understand the joy that comes from getting to work safely and getting to school safely. So it's a pleasure to be here today. Thanks for everything you do, and Upholding Matters. Check it out. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Commissioner comments, anything? No. Nothing? Then we'll stand adjourned until June 13th at 10 a.m.